Welcome to Wild Soul Gathering. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie, and I'll be your host for this episode of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. Hello to all you wild souls out there. I want to send a special thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to join and listen to our guests as we discuss the many aspects of spirituality. To stay updated on our latest releases, please follow us, share with friends who may be interested, and if you feel so moved, a kind rating and review is always appreciated. In the tradition of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome to Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie, and today I am gifted to have MarciaGrace on the show. MarciaGrace has had a truly unique spiritual journey, and definitely she's a bit of a wild soul. Welcome to the show, MarciaGrace.
Hi, Sandra. I am so delighted to be here after the conversation that we had recently, that it would be such a joy to share with you. So I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. You're probably best known for your 40-plus years of work with A Course in Miracles, both as a student and a teacher, and I'm definitely looking forward to delving into A Course in Miracles with you. As you said when we talked before, there's so much more to you and there's so much more to your journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you've recently put together a program, I believe it's called Awakening with Spirit, that I wanted to talk about. And rumor has it you met the Dalai Lama once. I have to share with you that I have been creating and manifesting my meeting with the Dalai Lama. So more to come on that. I'll keep you in the loop. Before we get started on some of these other topics, though, I was really hoping you could share a little bit about your childhood and your exposure to the metaphysical. You also had sort of a unique exposure as a child that was different, especially during the time you were growing up.
That is true. That is very true. I was a fish out of water in a sense, because at that time, and I'm going back many, many years to the 50s, at that time, divorce wasn't what it is today. People stayed together. But my mother divorced my father, so I was an only child, which was a weird thing to be in school. I felt kind of different. And my mother went to work, which was another weird thing because, most mothers were home. They were housewives, where I grew up in Queens, New York. Protect myself, shall I say, I became a bookworm. Books became my friends. As a young child, I just read everything I could get my hands on. And what happened to have my hands on was the books in my house, because my mother, who was another weirdo, so to speak, kind of a fish out of water, she had her own challenges as a child, but she was always curious and wanting to learn new things. She became a very well-known astrologer in those days, and in fact did charts for people on Broadway while she was a fashion buyer on 7th Avenue. That's what she did to earn a living. She had a lot of books in the house, but these books were all about spiritual things. Most, not all. There were a lot of historical novels and things like that. But I read things that probably nobody's ever heard of that started me on my spiritual path at 11, 12 years old, maybe even younger. I don't even know. Yeah, so that was kind of a different start for me. I was still part of the typical growing up girl child thing to look for a husband. That's what we did in those days. I did get married, went through a tough time because my first marriage lasted less than a year. It was actually a tragic situation there. I got a job and I went to work. And then I met a man on 47th Street in New York City in the jewelry district when I went to buy myself a watch for my birthday. And he ended up being my husband. I'm making a very long story short here. That gave me the freedom when we were married, that gave me the freedom to explore my spirituality. At that time, had found something called A Course in Miracles. Well, I did find it shortly after we were married. That became my life's path. It's been something that's always been with me. I've taught it for 40 years and studied it and continue to, because I really feel I'm a student of that material until the day I lay my body down. There's always more to understand. I was just reading my lesson this morning, like I'd never read it before. It was like, oh my gosh, look at what it's saying. This is amazing. So there's always more growth to get out of a work that has great significance, like the Bible or any of the great spiritual literary works. The Quran, I've read parts of all of them when I was studying to be a minister. The Upanishads and the Vedas, of course, Buddhism, all the Buddhist work. Just amazing stuff. I have all that stuff buzzing around in my head. But the Course became my path.
You truly have been a very curious soul from the very beginning. Now you got into the Course with Miracles, and in full transparency, I have to tell you, I've had very little exposure or insight into the teaching with A Course of Miracles. I've heard it mentioned a number of times, especially with people in the public eye, saying that A Course in Miracles had changed their lives. I never really took it that next step to delve into it. In the spirit of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious, I felt really pulled to get someone on the show to talk about it because it's been so powerful and it's around for such a long time. And honestly, who better than you? I would like to rewind just a little bit. I did a little bit of research on A Course in Miracles, which I just associated with Marianne Williamson and realized that it really had gotten started much earlier. There's a much bigger story to it. Her story was just amazing to read also. If you would be willing to talk a little bit about how A Course in Miracles got started, it is such a great story with these psychologists in this channeling situation. I was just amazed. If you could share that with the listeners, my guess is most people don't know about it, but I could be wrong.
Who knows? I've heard what you've said many, many times, that they think Marianne Williamson wrote the course. Which, of course, she'd be the first one to be horrified at the thought, because she has written several books on course themes, and it's really been her life path. And she's been so outspoken, and everybody knows her. It's obviously the reason why people connect her. The way the course actually began was with two psychologists. As you said, they were at Columbia University in the city. They were clinical psychologists working on different things, whatever, I don't know. Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford were their names. Helen worked for Bill, but she, one day, I'm trying to kind of condense this because there's actually a whole book that was written by my teacher, Dr. Wapnick, who wrote the whole story of the course. If you're interested, you can get that whole story in a book called Absence from Felicity. And that's the story of the birth of the course. Helen went home one night from... When she went home from work one night, she heard a voice, and this voice said to her, "Take dictation." She was like, "What?" She was a little upset. She came into work the next day and said, "Bill, I'm hearing voices. I think I must be going crazy. It's telling me to take dictation." So he says to her, he says, "Well, try it and see. Let's see. I mean, I don't know what you heard, but go home and see what you get." So she did. The voice said, "This is a course in miracles. It's a required course. The time you take it doesn't matter." Because I'm paraphrasing here, but no one can teach you the meaning of love because that is beyond the scope of this work. I just lost it. Let me read it. I'll read it to you. It's the opening lines of the text of the course. All right. This is a course in miracles. It's a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. She brought that in to Bill the next day, and he read it, and he went, that's pretty interesting. Keep going. And so they did. And he happened to be a better typist than Helen was. So she would go home and she would write down she had her own little shorthand that she devised. And she would come back into the office the next day and she would read to him what she wrote and he would type it up. And this went on for 6+ years. I don't know. It was quite a while. Over time, they developed Course in Miracles. And it came, when it was published, it was originally published in 3 volumes. And this is the text. This is the workbook. And then there was a skinnier volume called Manual for Teachers. What happened in the second edition, they took these 3 volumes and, believe it or not, were able to condense it down into 1 volume on very thin paper so that people could carry it around. Because what happened was that people started to read the material and they wanted to talk with other people about it because it's written in English, but parts of it are in iambic pentameter, which is an older form of English with a lot of double negatives. And yeah, it can be a little confusing to read. And I think more so even than that is the fact that the concepts are so deep that when you try to wrap your head around what you're reading, your ego or the part of you that doesn't want to know about peace and joy, is going to try to say, nah, you don't want to read this stuff. Yeah. Don't read that. So people have joined together in groups as a result over the years to study together and try to figure out what this darn course is saying. So that in a nutshell is how it got going.
Can you talk a little bit? Is it like daily lessons? Is it meditations, devotional? I understand there's a big focus on forgiveness.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So now I can talk a little bit about the main purpose of the course is to have peace of mind. Right? That's the goal of the course for every student. And the way you get there, and this is an incredible oversimplification, but the way you get there is through forgiveness and acceptance of your brothers and sisters around you. And we're all brothers and sisters. There's a great sense of equality in the course. There's no sense of hierarchy. You have your relationship with the divine, and I have my relationship with the divine, and they're both beautiful. There's no better or worse. All right. The course has the workbook, which has 365 lessons. Theoretically a lesson a day. Of course, I don't know anybody who did a lesson a day consecutively for 365 days. I mean, that's not easy to do. Although I did it actually to prove that I could. That's another story. And and it took years to get there. For instance, would you like me to read a lesson or read part of a lesson? Because they're not.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Okay. My lesson, beautiful lesson. This is lesson 67, and it says, "Love created me like itself." Today's idea is a complete and accurate statement of what you are. This is why you are the light of the world. This is why God appointed you as the world's savior. I mean, just listen to this. Don't try to figure it out. This is why the Son of God looks to you for his salvation. He is saved by what you are. We will make every effort today to reach this truth about you and to realize fully, if only for a moment, that it is the truth.
Wow.
Do you want me to read more?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. In the longer practice period, we will think about your reality and its wholly unchanged and unchangeable nature. We will begin by repeating this truth about you and then spend a few minutes adding some relevant thoughts, such as, holiness created me holy, kindness created me kind, helpfulness created me helpful, perfection created me perfect. Any attribute which is in accord with God as he defines himself is appropriate for use.
Awesome.
We are trying today to undo your definition of God and replace it with his own. We are also trying to emphasize that you are part of his definition of himself. And it goes on, but I think you got the gist of it.
Wow, definitely pretty deep and insightful, and it just speaks to you. When you're teaching these, is it a one-on-one, as a group? I know you do some Facebook Lives. What does teaching A Course in Miracles look like? I'm sure it looks different for different people.
It does. Yes, very different. I think some people do like 6 or 8 week things, and they'll take out a concept and discuss the kind of lecture on the concept, which is a good way to go. I just feel for me that, like anything else, to really imbibe a great teaching, you need to read it and then work with it. Like if you're making a cake, right? You've got to take the flour and the sugar and whatever, and you've got to mix all this stuff together. And there are all these different ingredients. I've got a sentence here and a phrase here and a word here and a thought here and a concept there. And you want to be able to put them together. Sometimes that's tricky. Like maybe my measuring cup broke and I don't know how much to measure. I can't measure it properly. So you need someone else to lend you their measuring cup. That's why people get together in groups and work with other people who have spent more time studying perhaps and have a better understanding of the material, because it's very, very, very easy. And I've seen this happen over the years many, many times, where people misconstrue what the Course is saying because they read a sentence and then they say, oh, this is what the Course says. But you can't take a sentence out of context. and think that that's what it means. I forgot to mention this. When Helen was receiving this dictation, she was told that she was speaking with Jesus. It was Jesus who was dictating his message to her. Now, again, that's hard for a lot of people to grasp. And I don't think I even thought about that for the first couple of years that I was studying. I didn't care who dictated it because I just loved the material. It didn't matter to me because I wasn't ready to accept that Jesus was the author. As I said, it took a while. When you're putting all your ingredients together, all your thoughts, all your ideas, and you're with other people, the concepts start to come together and then they can live in you. And then you can do what the Course really wants us to do, which is to take these ideas and actually put them into practice in the world. I'm what you call a practical mystic. I totally believe that if you're not exemplifying these principles of love and forgiveness, what good is it? There's no sense to that. You want to be able to take these ideas and put them in the world and share them with other people so that we can make this world a better place and make our relationship, most importantly, to make our relationships better, right? Because we all care about our relationships. Everybody cares about their relationships, whether it's their relationships with their family members or with their people they work with or with their business endeavors or whatever it is. That's primary. That's of primary importance. What the Course does is it allows us to circumnavigate all the ego junk. And when I say ego junk, our egos love to judge. We think we're figuring out what other people mean by what they say, and we're often so wrong, so wrong. If you're coming from your ego voice or belief system, now it gets tricky because what the ego teaches is that there are two thought systems in our heads. There's the ego system, which doesn't love us. I'm going to tell you that. It's that little devil on your shoulder there saying, don't trust them, don't go there, that's a bad thing, oh, they're out to get you, that scared voice. And then there's the other voice, the voice of spirit, which is sitting on your other shoulder, and it's telling you, love is all there is. Let's love each other. Let's be kind to each other. Let's talk to each other. Let's work together. There's that conversation that's always going around in our thoughts. The idea of the Course is to get us to notice the difference between the thoughts that are holding me back from having loving relationships and the thoughts that are going to draw me in and allow me to have those loving relationships. Does that make sense?
It does. And as you're talking, I'm like, I love the practicality of all of this because it does give you a context and then it provides you opportunities for solutions. And I love that you brought up the ego. The ego drives so many issues for so many people. So I will have to tell you, I love that the Course comes from, you said it comes from, that it came from Jesus consciousness, spirit. It clearly comes from a power higher than ourselves. I know you and I talk about being pulled by spirit and what that feels like and looks like, but I'm just slightly amused, having worked in the medical field, having worked in behavioral health for a period of my career. I have to love that spirit channeled this through voices to a psychologist who really probably was having a significant meltdown there that she was hearing voices to get this, but that they were able to get past that and work through to create this beautiful piece of work that has influenced so many people's lives in such a positive way.
Mm-hmm. There's one other thing I really want to say about what the Course's purpose is. I do want to get this point across that, because this is where I come from. When I'm teaching the Course, what I start off right away is that I want every one of my students to realize that we have the power of decision in our own minds to make our lives peaceful, joyful, and abundant, whatever that means to the individual. And it's not out there. Okay, that's my point. It's not out there. It's within me. Me, not the body, but within my consciousness, within the realm of my awareness. That's where my answers are. And that's what the Course is teaching. It's teaching us to learn how to trust that voice. It often calls it a voice, just like Helen heard a voice. And she took down this, what she called internal dictation. We can all do that. Absolutely. Everybody can do that. I mean, she was just a role model. And I talk to Jesus all the time. So I'm right there,
Me too.
same ballpark. We can have that relationship and know that it's real. That's the real thing. That's the real part of us, because you know why? What you're hearing is always going to tell you something that's going to be positive, that's going to join you. It's going to resolve an issue. Let's put it that way. Okay. That's my proof. That's the proof to me that what I'm hearing is not crazy, but in fact, the truth of who I am and what reality really is. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure you do.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That makes total sense. That's why I love having these conversations is there's people who've either been experiencing these things or are now more consciously open to experiencing them. I feel like these conversations help normalize our growth and our increasing our consciousness as individuals in the world, which seems to be more people are open to these days.
Absolutely. You know, I work with a lot of business people. My clients have been small business owners, entrepreneurs, artists, writers, people like that. Those are the kind of people I hang with. So I worked on a one-to-one with them, teaching my Awakening with Spirit program. My whole point is that we want to learn how to be peaceful in the midst of the chaos of the world around us. And people who are in the business community affect a lot of people. For me, that's really valuable that if I can reach one person and I can get them to begin to see their brilliance and their holiness and their kindness and compassion and within themselves that they can share with other people, they're going to affect a lot of people around them. And for me, that's gold, right? That's fantastic. So that's why I work with that community.
I think that that's great. And I love that we segued into your new program that you have out there, Awakening with the Spirit. And I love that you work with the business communities. Having worked in the corporate world in that more executive type of role, it is really grinding. You know, it literally consumes your soul a lot of times. And when you get into these communities, people are on antidepressants and they're drinking and they're binge eating. I remember telling one of my managers once, we had to get this issue settled because I was going to put on 50 pounds with the stress from this situation if we didn't get it managed. I love how you're integrating personal growth, spirituality into all of that because you are absolutely right. The downstream effects from business is very broad. Can you talk a little bit about how you decided to put together this Awakening in Spirit? And I believe it's a 4-week online course as well as what you're doing with some of the one-on-one.
Sure, I'd be happy to. It was going to be an online course. I haven't actually gotten to that point yet. I do it and have for years work one-to-one with people, but I'm certainly open to creating that program online in the near future. I've been really focusing on the Course in Miracles classes that I'm running right now, but who knows? Spirit will tell me what I need to do. I'm just keeping my ears open, my spiritual ears, and hopefully, and we'll hear what comes next. What happened was that over the years, I was studying the course, teaching the course, because I've always been a big reader. And I was reading things like Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, where she talks about writing morning pages. And I was doing yoga, always have done yoga. In fact, that's how I found the course, was through a yoga class that I was taking right after my daughter was born. The principles of yoga have always been very close to my heart. So all of that's bubbling around in my head. My Facebook Live is called Stress Less for Real Success. And I mean real success, which to me means that your thoughts, your actions, and your words are all in alignment. And that means that we need to be taking care of our body. We need to be taking care of our thoughts, our mind, and we need to, of course, nurture our spirituality. So that's the 3 aspects of each and every person that need to be addressed. And if we're missing one of them, we're off balance, and then we're not going to be really successful. So that's my bottom line premise with anything that I teach. In the business community, again, those are my people. They really are very, very interested because, and you pointed this out before, the drugs aren't working. The pills, they can't sleep. They are overeating and overconsuming and nothing's working. Even meditation. Again, meditation can be an escape. And that might be a strange thing to say, but if you don't come from the right place when you're learning or attempting to create your own meditation process, it may not work out as well for you. That's why I say it's so important to have a good teacher, because even something as beautiful and sublime as meditation can be used incorrectly if it's coming from the ego. My own practice in the morning before I would start my day, first it started out with a little yoga, stretching and breathing, so forth. And then it developed into a 4-step process, or four steps that you do in the morning to start your day. and with meditation being the final outcome of that. I do believe that you need to prepare your body. People say, oh, meditation is easy. You just sit down and you go home and you're in bliss, right? So how come more people aren't successful at meditation? And the reason is that they don't have a good teacher. It's not as easy as one might think, because to start a new habit, right? Meditation needs to become an unconscious habit, something you just do automatically in order to get the greatest benefit. And for it to really change your life, it needs to be something you do every single day without thought. You just do it. That was the point of my teaching this class and helping people get to that point. What I did was I started the program adding in these 4 steps. And it worked for me. Works for me is what I do every day myself. As I've taught it to other people, it's remarkable, the changes that have happened for them and how they've suddenly been able to see their life situations in a different way, because that's the whole point. We get so rooted into a belief about how something is, and we don't question it. And so if you don't question your beliefs, nothing changes. And then if nothing changes, well, how can you expect yourself to progress, to grow in your spiritual practices or in your happiness or your success, right? You have to be open and willing, like an empty vessel, right? If the vessel's all filled up and nothing can get in, nothing changes. It's static. We have to allow ourselves to pour out the old stuff so that we can bring in the new stuff and allow change to happen. I laugh when I think about at my age, which is 70 plus, I can find my way around technology. I mean, not that I'm, believe me, far from an expert, but I mean, I can manage my computer, I can manage my phone. And, other people my age, they look at me and they say, I don't understand. How did you learn all that stuff? Well, it's because I allow myself to be open and to be interested and to keep up with what's going on around me. I often say, if I had to tell kids one word, give kids one word for life, it would be or 2 words. I'm going to make it 2 words. Be curious. Be curious.
Here, I'm
as
with
long
you
as you're
on that
curious
one.
and you allow your mind to be open and you allow yourself to learn new things, you'll never get old. I mean, I'm not old. I mean, I'm old, the numbers are there, but I don't feel any older than, and I'll remember this, my mother said it the same way. She said, I don't feel any older than 16. She said, and I looked at her at the time, she was probably about 40 at the time, saying, I'm thinking she's an old lady. And but now I know exactly what she meant. Yeah.
Life is fluid. You talked early in the show about MarciaGrace. I keep wanting to say Marcia. How MarciaGrace came about. My question for you is, what led you to decide to become an interfaith minister later in life? Because you were already pretty well established before you decided to do that, weren't you?
No, I wasn't. No.
Oh, okay.
I got married at a young age. I probably was about 21 or so when I met my husband, the second husband, and we got married and had 2 children. And I was a housewife, and I was reading the Daily Word. Actually, I started out with the Daily Word because, again, I was a big reader and constantly reading self-help books and, just anything with a spiritual bent to it, or going to places like the Open Center in the city and then going upstate to retreats upstate that I would go to. So I kept that spiritual aspect going while I was raising my family. I just was getting prompted, there's something you have to do. Then I found the course and I was studying and reading the course and I began teaching the course. So that I was doing. I decided to go back to college. I went to college, which was right near me, and got my BA at Stony Brook University. Then I was teaching the course with a friend of mine, Reverend Joanne Barrett. We were working together on a little newsletter for the course in our area. I saw this little brochure on her table, and it said something about this, become an interfaith minister. And I picked it up, and it was like I picked up this thing, and there was like this energy in it, and it said, we have to do this. I didn't even know what it was, but I looked at it, I said, we have to do this. And she's saying, what are you, crazy? I've got 4 kids, and you want me to go in and take some kind of course? So I said, yeah, we have to do this. And we did. We went into the city. We did our 3 years of training to be interfaith ministers with Rabbi Gelberman, who was absolutely just a novel individual, to say the least. And we loved him like crazy. It was an incredible experience. Again, at the end of it, being that we were independent ministers, we really didn't know what we were going to do. Joanne has taken her ministry to incredible levels. She has a beautiful ministry here on Long Island and is just doing wonderful, wonderful things. And so I'm very proud of her. I went off in a different direction, started teaching the classes and working with business people. We took different paths, but we're still connected.
Wow. Both very powerful and important in the work that needs to be done. So kudos to both of you. What do you have coming up next?
Well, you mentioned this early on about coming out of the closet spiritually. I laugh when I say that, but for years I was teaching stress reduction.
Oh, we talked about it when we...
Oh, that's right. We didn't talk about it today. For years, what I was calling my training was stress reduction. In my mind, I felt if I brought up spirituality to business people, they would run away. I mean, that was my belief. Okay, there you go. There's an example of what I'm saying. I had a belief and it said, don't talk spiritual stuff to these business people because they won't get it. But what I've been seeing over the last several years is all of these business people doing these online courses to help people learn how to bring out their spirituality in their business. And I'm saying, hey, they do want to know. When I started to open myself up to, when I went to networking events and started to talk about things like hearing guidance, talking about I got this message and waiting to see what kind of reaction I would get, right? And they would acknowledge, oh yeah, well, so what? What did it tell you? So I said, okay, this is good. I'm doing the right thing. And my guidance is telling me to teach the course specifically now. Don't beat around the bush. Teach the basic core principles just as they are. They say go back to your base literature because that's where the true teaching is, because everything else then becomes an interpretation, which is fine. We're all entitled to our interpretations, but I like teaching the actual original work. That's why I decided to do this online course, which I'm doing on first and third Mondays at 7 p.m. ET. We start off with a meditation just to relax and get centered and bring ourselves into the moment. Right now, we're talking about what a miracle is, because I think we're just starting off, and the whole idea is to understand how we make miracles practical, put them into our daily practice. It's not the opening of the Red Sea or some magical, mystical thing happening. Miracles happen. They should be happening every day, all day long. And I say that absolutely seriously. Miracles should be happening all day long, and we can have that. That's what I hold out to my students. Yeah.
How would people get a hold of you and your Facebook Lives?
I can give you the link to the Eventbrite page that allows people to sign up. The way I'm doing it is I call them gatherings. So it's called Miracle Mastery Mind Gatherings. You can come for one gathering just to see what it's like. That's $27. It's not a huge investment. And if you like that, then you can save some money by coming more frequently or signing up for the month, which would be 2 gatherings, or for a 6-month package, which would be 12 gatherings. That's on Eventbrite, and I can give you that link. Does that sound good?
Yep, I'll include that in the show notes and on the website. And if someone wanted to just reach out and have some kind of contact with you, you have a website, or how would you like them to get a hold of you?
Probably the best way is email. Just email me at mg@MarciaGrace.com, which is MarciaGrace.com. Yeah, shoot me an email. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. On Instagram, I'm Modern Meditation Mentor. That's my handle on Instagram.
Oh, I like that. I'll get all your links together and I'll put them in the show notes. It sounds like you've got a lot going and that you have a lot that you're looking to continue to do and keep moving. I do have to ask you, because I brought it up in the very beginning, how did you meet the Dalai Lama? It's like a dream of mine to meet the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, he's a remarkable person. Well, the way I met him was years ago. He came to New York City and he was in Central Park. Huge gathering in the park. I forget who I dragged to go with me. I was really insistent because there was a huge crowd there and I really wanted to get as close as I could. So, and it's not like me to step over people, but I was pretty determined to get as close as I could.
Oh, trust me, I get that one.
So I did that with Ram Dass too, and I finally got up to him, and he patted me on the head. Made my day for sure. So I got up. I didn't get actually touch him or anything like that, but I was close enough that I could feel his incredible loving energy and just the way he talks. He's just so loving and so natural, right? So completely natural and down to earth. That's what I love about him. He's so down to earth.
Yeah, he's definitely special. He speaks to me on so many different levels for sure. As we're going to wind this up, any last thoughts that you would like to leave for the listeners? You've got so much wisdom in there.
Yeah. I guess what I want to leave people with is to trust your inner guidance. Listen to that little voice that you hear that whispers to you. It doesn't have to be a voice, it's just a prompting, a little something that says, do this. And then you want to pull back. Notice that you kind of don't want to do that because that's the resistance of the ego that stops us from getting ahead. Don't listen to that. Listen to that prompting and forge ahead. Be brave and be curious. Those are the two things that I would say as we go through our spiritual journey. Be brave, be curious.
Wow, I love that. Be brave and be curious. MarciaGrace, you are truly a very special soul, and I want to thank you so much for your willingness to be on the show, open yourself up, and share what you have to help others on their journey. I would also like to thank our listeners for taking time out of their day. Until next time, remember, embrace that wild soul. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us for this episode of Wild Souls Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To find out more about our guests, how to contact them, or detail on this episode, please see our show notes. You can also visit us at our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We would love to hear from our visitors what you thought of this show, what you would like to see and hear in the future, questions you may have. Go to podinbox.com/happy hour for the spiritually curious. You can leave either a voice or traditional message for us. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.